Despite your repeated appeals to the United States and Israel, did you condemn what the United States and Israel started doing? And, for example, did you condemn the death of 170 girls at a school? I believe we must take a unified position. We are against the suffering of the Gulf countries, on whose behalf you are speaking. We believe that this does not give our Iranian colleagues any military advantages. Politically, it is very doubtful that Iran gains anything from this. Quite the opposite. But we also cannot accept the logic that Iran's actions are unacceptable, while everything the US and Israel do is off limits. Do you understand what I'm getting at? It's an obvious thing, right on the surface. We demand an immediate end to aggression, and we would sincerely appreciate it if the Gulf States Council and all the countries represented here would add their voice to this, because that is the root of all that is happening. It can be said that Iran did not react as everyone expected. I agree with that. But when a country is subject to aggression in the middle of negotiations, treacherous aggression, they had agreed to continue negotiations. I spoke, as I mentioned, with the Foreign Minister of Oman, Badr al-Busaidi. He was simply shocked that things unfolded this way at a moment when, in his estimation, resolutions were being discovered. Therefore, yes, we stand in solidarity with all the Gulf countries that are suffering from what is happening. We urge a united front for ending this war, because to simply say Iran has no right to do anything means you are, in fact, openly encouraging the US and Israel to continue. It is illogical. Let's all act together to halt any hostilities, starting with a complete moratorium on attacks that lead to casualties among the civilian population and to the destruction of civilian infrastructure. As is happening in many Arab countries, we see how the global economy is being deprived, at least for a certain extended period, of one of its primary engines. The way oil refineries are being eliminated, it's all terrible. I've heard, by the way, that your countries, I think even Bahrain, now want to introduce a resolution in the UN Security Council, in the spirit that you mentioned, to condemn Iran's aggression without saying a single word about the actions of the United States and Israel. Well, probably this will only divide the situation further. I'm sure the Americans will, of course, latch on to this initiative. It fully aligns with their logic, which is to finish off this regime, a regime that has no right to exist. I very much hope that the bloodshed will end. And it won't end by preserving this approach, which essentially means that the Iranian government, system, organization and state have no right to exist. Who gives the right to anyone? But is there still a slight chance this will end with the realization of the futility of such adventures in the future, and the inevitability of reaching agreements that will be sustainable, mutually respectful, based on the principle of indivisibility of security? Well, there's always a chance. At the moment it's minimal, but we do not abandon our efforts to promote this concept. As we say, constant dripping wears away the stone. We hear Israeli officials say that 2 or 3 municipalities for the Palestinians on the West Bank will be enough. I don't want to give the impression that we are always right, while someone else constantly makes mistakes. But we recognized the Palestinian state in 1987, and at that time, I assure you, if the same position had been taken by everyone else, or the majority of other states, it wouldn't have been fantastical. We are still committed to returning Gaza to the Palestinians, to restoring Gaza. And the $1 billion, which President Putin announced from our frozen reserves in the US, specifically, we informed the Americans with a note, will be directed at addressing housing issues, social facilities, and the restoration of civilian infrastructure, to solve all those issues that will allow the Palestinians to return. We did not request those funds for any other purposes. By the way, following President Putin's official note, we sent an official note. There's been no response from our American colleagues yet. We reminded them a couple of times, but they do not respond. We only hear now, it seems, they no longer mention the Middle Eastern Riviera, but there's vague talk of restoring it, maybe making some kind of resort. It seems to me that this would be disrespectful to the Palestinians. They are being dispersed all over the world, from Indonesia to Somalia. The decision belongs to the Palestinians, but it is their right to their own land. No one can undermine or challenge the need to restore the Gaza Strip, and restore it in such a way that guarantees the right of Palestinians to return. I have no doubt about that. Currently, regarding Palestinian refugees, no one mentions anymore that they've always had the right to return. And if now the indigenous residents of the Gaza Strip are deprived of the right to return, well, this would of course be a disgrace and a shame for the United Nations. We want to stop this, but let's do it together. This will require not just saying that Iran must stop. This will require assessing the whole picture. And as I have already said, why not advocate for the adoption of a resolution in the Security Council, perhaps at the General Assembly as well? That calls for an immediate end to this conflict. And of course, mention as a priority first step the halt of actions that cause harm to civilians and civilian infrastructure. This can only be done collectively. We are somewhat unclear about the role of the IAEA and its secretariat, because never, not once anywhere in any IAEA report, was there a hint of suspicion that Iran could have a nuclear bomb. Yes, there were facts about having enriched uranium beyond what is necessary for energy production. But no one mentions that Iran only began ramping up enrichment when the United States in 2017 withdrew from the agreement regulating Iran's nuclear program. As long as the agreement was in effect, it was unanimously approved by the Security Council. Iran strictly adhered to all the restrictions imposed there. But as soon as the US withdrew from this agreement and Europe remained quietly indifferent without even expressing any protest, Iran waited, and then as a reaction, to somehow stimulate the return of conscience to their Western colleagues, who themselves destroyed the Security Council's decision, began increasing enrichment. This, of course, did not contribute to peacefulness, but nonetheless it was justified. And when they began condemning these actions by Iran, it was again an attempt to cancel history, an outright attempt to justify their own actions and unjustly punish Iran. Knowing Europeans, one shouldn't be surprised, but each time they demonstrate certain qualities that create additional opportunities for amazement. And when Mr. Gross, when asked about the IAEA, said, "My previous reports indicate that until Iran assists the IAEA in resolving unresolved safeguard issues, the agency cannot guarantee that Iran's nuclear programs are solely peaceful in nature." Do you know what this is about? Until Iran assists in resolving unresolved safeguard issues, the IAEA insists on getting access to those facilities whose nuclear programs were bombed by the United States in June. Until recently, they insisted on this. Iran, and indeed we, asked the agency, these facilities are under IAEA control and guarantees, and they were bombed, which is categorically prohibited. Can the IAEA express its viewpoint on this unlawful act? It didn't happen. The IAEA just started saying, we need access to these facilities. You see, the history of the origin of this process is being cancelled again. Facilities that are inviolable by all rules, as they are under IAEA control, are bombed, and the IAEA is silent and says, "Can I go check what's left there?" This is an unprofessional approach. This is a politicized approach. Currently they are trying, when spreading IAEA reports, to cancel history again. And this new aggression we are witnessing is of the same kind. As a result, everything related to negotiations, comments, Iran's efforts, and the efforts of those countries trying to mediate is being cancelled. This concerns the Russian Federation.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now.